On February 6, 2026, the Interbehavioral Research Lab at Maynooth State University will be hosting the first International Congress of Interbehaviorism. If you don't know what interbehaviorism is, that's okay. Most people don't. That is sort of the point of the Congress. Our goal is to advance interbehavioral psychology and adjacent fields by sharing and discussing contemporary research, theory, and obstacles. The first day of the Congress comprises a one-day conference, which you can attend in person or online. The next 2 days consist of discussion among invited presenters. For more information, you can visit our website, www.ibxrl.com. In preparation for the Congress, we are asking each of the invited presenters some questions about themselves, their work, and interbehaviorism. Today we're going to be talking to Dermot Barnes-Holmes, a professor of psychology at Ulster University, Northern Ireland.
My name is Dermot Barnes-Holmes, and I suppose I've been in academia for around almost 40 years now, and most of that time has been spent working in the area of relational frame theory or areas closely associated with that research domain. I suppose the connection I have, or that has, to interbehaviorism is that, as most people know, RFT was heavily influenced, at least in the early days, by the work of Linda Hayes and her work in that area. And so the first time I read, or the first chapter, or the first piece of work I read on RFT was actually the one she collaborated on with Steve on rule governance in the Rule Governed Behavior book in 1989. It was full of terms like actualized functions and so on. And it was also about rule governed behavior rather than about single relational frames. And so complexity was built into it. And so as a result, I suppose I've been influenced implicitly, if not explicitly, throughout my career by interbehavioral psychology through Linda's influence on RFT. And so that's why I suppose I'm going to attend this conference online, and why I'm so become increasingly interested in recent times in interbehavioral field theory and Kantorian psychology generally. And so they run the line, and there's not much more to say about myself or my career in that regard, except it's been obviously heavily dominated by RFT. And I'm now, as I say, in the twilight of my career, coming towards the latter end, but bizarrely enough, going back to the beginning almost and rediscovering interbehavioral psychology. I suppose my main research interests, as I said, are relational frame theory, but I'm particularly interested in using RFT not to understand derived relations as such, but to use it as a way of understanding human language and cognition. And I do see quite a lot in the literature in RFT, which seems to have turned it into a theory of matching to sample or matching to sample relations rather than a theory of human language and cognition. And I think that is a current concern of mine, if you like. And I think one way to address that and to ensure that RFT it continues as a broad account, an attempt at a broad account, just one of possible accounts, but a broad account of language recognition, is to re-embrace its Kantorian beginnings, because Kantorian psychology really, for me, is about complexity. It's about providing a way of looking at human psychology that doesn't simplify it, it complicates it, which is, I think, one of the reasons that it's still a niche area, and concepts such as the operant and discriminative control and so on and reinforcement were so successful in their day, because they simplified things and allowed you to do work readily. I think Cantor in that sense was before his time, and suggested a unit of analysis, a way of looking at human psychology that wouldn't yield to the technology that was available at that time. I think we're getting close to the technology that will allow us to work more realistically with field-based concepts. And so my current interest is very much built around relational frame theory and its relationship to interbehavioral psychology, and how we can leverage both of those together to step up to the challenge of complexity in modern psychology and modern behavioral analysis, which I think is really important. So that brings me, I suppose, to what I plan to present. And I put my hand on my heart. I'm not quite certain yet. I'm still working on it. It's still, or still thinking about it even. And the reason for that is that there's so much in flux at the moment. Colin, myself, Linda, and Mitch just literally publishing a paper on, how we could do an interbehavioral interpretation of the relational frame, the concept of the relational frame itself. And that's coming out. But as I was sort of intimating just a minute or so ago, I think one of the primary things I'd like to focus on is the extent to which we can use interbehavioral thinking and Kantorian thinking to lay the groundwork, to lay a roadmap out for how we might approach complexity in human language and cognition. You see it, you can see people drawing in things like systems-based analyses and non-linear type analyses and so on. But we still don't have a basic unit of analysis. What would that be in behavioral psychology? Perhaps that could be something like the Kantorian interbehavioral field. And that would give us a firm footing. All sciences, I think, need a basic unit of analysis. They need something that everyone can get around. It doesn't, not ontologically, but just we have broad agreement this is our unit of analysis. And once we have that, then we can start doing empirical work and keep it coherent and relatively precise, and we all know what we're talking about. We don't all necessarily agree at the end about what the data are and how to interpret it, but at least we have a sense of what our core unit of analysis will be going forward. And so I think my talk for the conference will try and focus on that in one way or another, drawing of course on what I've done in RFT and the other work, but trying to explore the role of complexity, but also some of the bizarre things about Kantorian psychology as well. The idea that you let go of causality. You even seem to let go of time as well, and the ever unfolding present. But I love that. I love that about it because it challenges us to think very differently about human psychology and the human psychological event. So I really want to explore those sorts of things in my talk, not with any answers, but just to highlight them and say sort of how cool this is, how challenging it is, and how do we step up to that challenge of dealing with maybe a complete paradigm shift inside behavioral analysis, even inside psychology, to rethink what a psychological event might be? I suppose, and then with all of that, you said, well, why should you care? Why should we care about this? I think the reason we should care about it is I think psychology generally is in crisis. We know about the replication crisis. We know about the credibility crisis. But I think there is, I think we've gone as far as we can with hypothetico-deductive testing and trying to demonstrate simple effects in laboratory experiments. So we're now at a stage where I think psychology is going to change. I'm pro-open science and so on, but I think the situation is far worse for psychology than just the open science. I don't think you just adopt open science and then all the problems go away. I think it's a fundamentally philosophical problem or philosophical issue with how we approach psychology, and I think you can see certainly in mainstream psychology that's the case, but you can also see it maybe in behavioral analysis with it hanging on tightly to the concept of an operum, and it's been challenged elsewhere as well. Billy Baum and others in the field are starting to challenge the standard bearers of behavioral psychology as not really allowing us to move forward. So I think we should care not necessarily about Kantorian psychology as an historical event, but what it can give us going forward, because there were some fantastic insights in that work, and I think they can be fruitful in terms of trying to unshackle ourselves from simplistic ideas and simplistic research questions in behavioral psychology, which of course we have to in my area of language and cognition because it is so complex. And that's one of the things that brought me right back, or first alerted me, or I first loved about the interbehavioral way of thinking, because it was there front and center in that original chapter by Steve and Linda on rule governance, because they deal with, it's not about individual frames, it's how do you understand a relatively simple rule. And it's answered in a complex way, in a very field-based way. So I think we should care. If you care about behavioral analysis, you care about the future, then you should care about interbehaviorism, because it could be a way of helping us to deal with the problems or the challenges coming forward. And so finally, what would My first bit of advice, I suppose, to anyone wanting to get more involved into behaviorism is go to this conference or attend it in one way or another. Read Linda's and Mitch's book before you tackle Cantor or any interbehavioral text. They're very dense and they're fairly scary. I have a couple of them and I still wade through them. But a really good intro, I think, is the book, the recent book by Linda and Mitch on this. It really is a good primer. And apart from that, I think seriously, if you want to get into behaviorism, think seriously about the limitations of psychology and behavioral analysis as it currently stands and how we might address those problems. Because I think if you start looking at interbehaviorism, you will start to see that this could be a way forward in terms of the future.